Hi, my name is RC Story, and it's story time for adults. Allow me to hypnotize you with gnosis, knowledge that will put you to sleep and wake you up. Whether you're taking a nap, going to bed, hiking, doing yoga, or just relaxing, allow the knowledge to calm your soul, whether you're awake or falling asleep. This channel is for entertainment purposes only. Hypnosis audio recorded books are typically not found in stores, on library shelves, or easily accessible. The best kept secrets are usually in books, because who has time to read? So let me read for you. It's up to the listener's discretion to harvest the truth and weed out the distortion. The views in the books do not necessarily reflect the host or channel's views, but are for entertainment and relaxation only. Now, take a deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. And enjoy your story time. The Adam and Eve Story by Chan Thomas. To Yo, without her help through the years of sleepless nights and seemingly endless trails of study and translation, this book never would have come into being. The next cataclysm. Like Noah's 6,500 years ago, like Adam and Eve's 11,500 years ago, this too will come to pass. With a rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. Only it's not like any earthquake in recorded history. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Nothing, but nothing, stops the relentless, overwhelming onslaught of wind and ocean. Our wind wreaks its unholy vengeance everywhere, mercilessly, unceasingly. Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of Pikes Peak watch the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire and rising almost to their feet. Only great mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same cannonade, wind, earth fire, and inundation. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by nature in her berserk rage. In less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake, burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of torrential Pacific seas, and then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud are all rock hard in less than 4 hours. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic piles higher and higher upon itself. following the screeching wind eastward. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, and Scandinavian mountains are shaken and heaved even higher before the wall of water strikes. Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish in nature's wrath, under savage attack by wind and ocean. The area bounded by the Congo, South Africa, and Kenya suffers only severe earthquakes and winds, no inundation. Survivors there marvel at the sun standing still in the sky for nearly half a day. Eastern Siberia and the Orient suffer a strange fate indeed, as though a giant subterranean sky sweeps away the Earth's foundations, accompanied by the wind in its screaming symphony of supersonic death and destruction. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, Eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America: wind, earth fire, inundation, and freezing. Jungle animals are shredded to ribbons by the wind, piled into mountains of flesh and bone, and buried under avalanches of seawater and mud. Then comes the terrible, paralyzing cold. Not man, nor beast, nor plant, nor earth is left unfrozen in the entire Eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. East of the Urals and Western Siberia, a few lucky people survive the fantastic winds and quakes. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone, and the fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days and nights. During the 6th day, the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high grounds. On the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. The oceans, the great homogenizers, have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existing strata in the Great Plains, as exposed in the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, and Badlands. The Bay of Bengal Basin, just east of India, is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is at the South Pole. Greenland and Antarctica, now rotating equatorially in the torrid zone, find their ice caps dissolving madly in the tropical heat. Massive walls of water and ice surge toward the oceans, taking everything from mountains to plains in gushing, heaving paths, creating immense seasonal moraines. In less than 25 years, the ice caps are gone, and the oceans around the world rise over 200 feet with the newfound water. The torrid zone will be shrouded in a fog for generations from the enormous amounts of moisture poured into the atmosphere by the melting ice caps. New ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica emerge with verdant tropical foliage. Australia is the new unexplored continent in the North Temperate Zone, with only a few handfuls of survivors populating its vastness. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, shattered, melted by earth fire, and covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco and Los Angeles, not a trace is left. Egypt emerges from its Mediterranean inundation, new and higher, still the land of the ages. The commonplace of our time becomes the mysterious Baalbek of the new era. A new era! Yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. The greatest population regulator of all does once more for man what he refuses to do for himself, and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new Stone Age. Once more, the Earth has shifted its 60-mile thick shell, with the poles moving almost to the equator in a fraction of a day. Again, the atmosphere and oceans, refusing to change direction with the Earth's shell, have wiped out almost all life. After this tumble, we join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu and Olympus, and Jesus joins Osiris, Ta-Aurora, Zeus, and Vishnu. The Great Floods. Noah, Adam and Eve? Vishnu? Osiris? What do they have in common? They represent eras ages apart, and yet somehow they all join hands in the next cataclysm and walk with us. There are others who walk with us too, men of science, long forgotten, those who first saw that these tumbles, these cataclysmic catastrophes or revolutions of the Earth's shell have happened before, countless times. J. André de Luc in 1779 and Georges Cuvier in 1812 were the foremost. Dalomieu, the famous mineralogist, joined the consensus, as did Esker and Forel, the Swiss geologist. Also J. André de Luc Jr. and von Buch. They all agreed that the cataclysms were caused by sudden revolutions of the surface of the Earth. Cuvier, in his Theory of the Earth, first published in 1812, based his conclusions on his unparalleled correlative research in stratigraphy, comparative anatomy, and paleontology. At that time, he wrote, "Every part of the Earth, every hemisphere, every continent exhibits the same phenomenon. There has, therefore, been a succession of variations in the economy of organic nature. The various catastrophes which have disturbed the strata have given rise to numerous shiftings of this continental basin. It is of much importance to mark that these repeated eruptions and retreats of the sea have neither been slow nor gradual. On the contrary, most of the catastrophes which occasioned them have been sudden. And this is especially easy to be proved with regard to the last of these catastrophes. I agree therefore with M. de Luc and de Lameau in thinking that if anything in geology be established, it is that the surface of our globe has undergone a great and sudden revolution, the date of which cannot be much earlier than 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Also, one preceding revolution at least had put the continents underwater, perhaps 2 or 3 eruptions of the sea. These alternations now appear to me to form the problem in geology that it is of most importance to solve. In order to solve it satisfactorily, it would be necessary to discover the cause of these events. These ideas have haunted, I may almost say have tormented me during my researches among fossil bones. Researches which embrace but a very small part of those phenomena of the age preceding the last general revolution of the globe, and which are yet intimately connected with all the others. Many attempts have been made to answer the charge made to the geological profession by Cuvier to explain these sudden revolutions. Among others, Velikovsky tried it through his study of myths and legends. Hapgood tried it, Brown attempted, and in the process amassed a tremendous library of geological data. Every time the cataclysmic concept has come to life, the beast has been stoned, burned at the stake, beaten to a pulp, and buried with a vengeance, but the corpse simply won't stay dead. Each time, it raises the lid of its coffin and says in sepulchral tones, "You will die before I." The latest of the challengers is Professor Frank C. Hibben, who in his book The Lost Americans said, "This was no ordinary extinction of a vague geological period which fizzled to an uncertain end. This death was catastrophic and all-inclusive. What caused the death of 40 million animals? The corpus delicti in this mystery may be found almost anywhere. Their bones lie bleaching in the sands of Florida and in the gravels of New Jersey. They weather out of the dry terraces of Texas and protrude from the sticky ooze of the tar pits of Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. The bodies of the victims are everywhere. We find literally thousands together, young and old, fowl with dam, calf with cow. The muck pits of Alaska are filled with evidence of universal death, a picture of quick extinction. any argument as to the cause must apply to North America, Siberia, and Europe as well. Mammoth and bison were torn and twisted as though by a cosmic hand in a godly rage. In many places, the Alaskan muck blanket is packed with animal bones and debris in trainload lots. Mammoth, mastodon, bison, horses, wolves, bears, lions. A faunal population in the middle of some cataclysmic catastrophe was suddenly frozen in a grim charade. Fantastic winds, volcanic burning, inundation and burial in muck, preservation by deep freeze. Any good solution to a consuming mystery must answer all of the facts, challenges Hibben. The challenge wouldn't leave me alone. Like a hunger, it gnawed at my subconscious. I could hear the deep tones of Cuvier's challenge. Find the cause of these events, still reverberating through the sacred halls of science, ghostly, unanswered. I felt Hibben's challenge later on prodding, answer all of the facts. I decided that this cataclysmic concept, this catastrophic end which seems to visit our planet time after time, needed verification or refutation once and for all. The first step was to gather all of the known, accepted data from as many Earth sciences as possible: stratigraphy, archaeology, anthropology, paleontology, radiology, oceanography, seismology, glaciology, and many other fields. Correlation of the data between the sciences gave the answer, although there is enough data in each science to indicate that these cataclysms happen. There was not enough to prove the concept, but between science correlation showed indeed that the concept was true. Not only did it verify that the events have happened, but disclosed when the last 5 cataclysms were, and what positions the shell of the Earth had been in for the last 35,000 years. So, after years of research, beginning in 1949, Cuvier's challenge had an answer. Yes, indeed, the cataclysms do happen. And the last one, 6,500 years ago, was Noah's flood. Alright, so they happen. What is it that happens each time? The challenge was really twofold. Find the process, what happens in a cataclysm, and the trigger, what causes a cataclysm to start. What a chase, and what a dramatic story of the Earth's history we uncovered. Civilizations of 20,000 years ago, more advanced than our wildest imagination. Prehistoric legends from Greece, Egypt, India, and South America, which became history instead of legend. Lost continents in the Atlantic and Pacific, which became dated realities with logical reasons for their sudden disappearance. Yes, Vishnu came alive. A man who lived through a cataclysm 70,000 years before our time. Actually, 10 cataclysms ago. Now he is known as the Hindu god of 10 resurrections from the waters. Osiris, too, was rediscovered. He was the Jesus of his time, a man of Egypt, some 15,000 years ago. Noah smiled at us from the pages of the Epic of Gilgamesh. He actually was a Sumerian named Utnapishtim, who lived 6,500 years ago. The ark he built is more than legend. The process of a cataclysm is known now. Look at the cross-section of the Earth inside the front cover. You'll see 2 molten layers, the orange ones. The important one is the thin molten layer, about 60 miles thick, which is between 60 and 120 miles down below the surface of the Earth. The thick, deep molten layer, starting 1,800 miles down at the bottom of the mantle and extending 1,300 miles deeper, is the outer core. Now both molten layers are liquid. However, the inner magnetic and electrical structure of the Earth makes these layers act as if they were near solid or plastic. As long as the magnetic and electrical structure maintains its orderliness, this old Earth keeps on rotating on its axis in a normal manner. The growing ice caps, Antarctica and Greenland, are not centered on the Earth's axis, and because they rotate around the poles, are trying to swing down to the equator. The only way they could do it would be to pull the whole 60-mile thick shell around with them. As long as the shell molten layer stays plastic, the shell won't shift. But once every few thousand years, the magnetic and electrical orderliness inside the Earth is disrupted. And once the molten layer is allowed to act like a free liquid, which it was all the time anyway, it then serves as a lubricant for the ice caps to pull the shell of the Earth around the inside. In 1/4 to 1/2 a day, the poles move almost to the equator, and all hell lets loose. The atmosphere and oceans don't shift with the shell. They just keep on rotating west to east, and at the equator that speed is 1,000 miles per hour. It has to be normally to make one rotation per day. So while the shell shifts with the poles going toward the equator, the winds and oceans go eastward, blowing across the face of the Earth with supersonic speeds, inundating continents with water miles deep. Now, what about the trigger? This turned out to be the most elusive piece of the whole puzzle. We couldn't rely on some supernatural explanation like sometime happenings in the heavens of a vague character which actually violated the laws of nature. No, it had to be something natural, a part of nature's ordinary structure, which disrupts the Earth's inner electrical and magnetic structure whenever it happens. We once thought that sunspots could be the cause because they do disrupt the Earth's inner electrical and magnetic structure, but we were wrong. We found out that nature's power plant is a motor generator system existing in many different magnitudes. It's a basic structure of the universe. The energy structure of an atom is identical to a rotating planet, to a blue-white star, to a galaxy, to a supergalaxy, to all levels of supergalaxies, including a universe and even more. As a neutron which has escaped from its parent atom's neutral zone will separate into particles, a star through a sunspot gives off neutral matter which explodes as it becomes energized. So a galaxy gives birth to an exploding star when a dead star escapes from its neutral zone in the center. And as a dead galaxy explodes when it escapes from the central neutral zone of its parent supergalaxy, a planet therefore must act the same at its energy level. So apparently once every few thousand years, neutral matter escapes from the 860-mile radius inner core into the 1,300-mile thick molten outer core, and there's a literal atomic explosion inside the Earth. The explosion in the high-energy layer of the outer core disrupts completely the electrical and magnetic structure in both the molten outer core and the outer 60-mile thick molten layer. Finally, the ice caps are allowed to pull the shell of the Earth around the interior, with the shallow molten layer lubricating the shift all the way. You can see then that ice ages are not a matter of advancing and retreating ice. It's simply that different areas of the Earth are in polar regions at different times for different durations of time, with the changes between positions taking place in a fraction of a day. The story around the world gives a silent testimony. The Beresovka mammoth, frozen in mud, with buttercups in his mouth. The age of the gorges below Niagara Falls and St. Anthony's Falls, both about 6,500 years. The sudden end of the Laurentian Basin ice cap in Canada, about 11,500 years ago. The uninterrupted years of evolution on the Galapagos, over 11,000. The geological datings in the Murrumbidgee River Basin system in Australia, showing the end of an ice cap there about 11,500 years ago. The age of fossil bones taken from the Wilshire Boulevard tar pits, over 11,000 years. The sudden end of all work in the prehistoric city of Tiahuanaco, Peru, 9,550 BC, or 11,500 years ago. Leonard Woolley's great work in the Holy Land dating Noah's flood at about 6,000 years ago. The end of the Wisconsin ice cap about 20,000. The end of the Wisconsin ice cap about 29,000 years ago. The sudden 200-foot rise of the oceans all over the world, 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. The sudden rise of the St. Lawrence riverbed 6,500 years ago, the changing levels of the shoreline in the Hudson Bay, the granite blocks from the Alps sitting on the eastern slopes of the Jura Mountains at 4,000 feet above sea level, the great legendarian Fraser's uncovering of over 8,000 separate inundation survival legends in the Malay Peninsula region, the Pajark Marsh in Australia, which shows a quick extinction of a civilization 11,500 years ago, the Piri Reis map showing the North Pole in the Sudan Basin, the Egyptian water clock showing agreement with the Piri Reis map, granite on top of the mountains around Death Valley in California, the great stratifications of the Grand Canyon, painted desert, and badlands, each layer homogeneous, showing it to be deposited there suddenly by fantastic amounts of water. The computable age of the Antarctic and Greenland ice caps, about 6,500 years. The present growth of the Antarctic ice cap. The computable age of the Antarctic and Greenland ice caps, about 6,500 years. The present growth of the Antarctic ice cap, about 293 cubic miles per year. The legends from primitive man in Tierra del Fuego at the southern tip of South America of the day the sun set in the wrong direction. The legends from primitive man in Peru of the day the sun stood still. The legends from Malayan and Sumatran aborigines of the long night. The Varv, earth strata, counts in Renshaw, Minnesota, and Hackensack, New Jersey, which agree. The prevalence of jade in the Orient, which is material heaped up from the mantle near equatorial pivot points during a tumble. The fantastic evidence of a burgeoning tropical population in Arctic, Siberia, and Alaska, completely wiped out in a fraction of a day. The similarity of languages the world over, from Polynesian to Greek, to Egyptian, to Mayan, to Eskimo, to Yakut, to Oriental, and more. The correlation of ice ages and quick extinctions the world over. The survival of primitive life at equatorial pivot points, the last two being the Malay Peninsula and the Galapagos, now rife with lizards. The existence of a coral reef on the floor of the Arctic Ocean, and more and more and more and more give us a historical picture of the Earth's shell during the past 35,000 years. The overwhelming evidence, when put in order, gives a dramatic picture of which areas have been at the North Pole, when they moved to the pole, and how long they were there. Areas at the North Pole. The Arctic Ocean. Years ago, started 6,500. Ended, ? Duration, ? The Sudan Basin area at the North Pole started 11,500 years ago, ended 6,500 years ago, duration 5,000 years. The Hudson Bay area at the North Pole started 18,500 years ago, ended 11,500 years ago, duration 7,000 years. The Caspian Sea area at the North Pole started 29,000 years ago, ended 18,500 years ago, duration 10,500 years. Wisconsin area at the North Pole started 35,000 years ago, ended 29,000 years ago, duration 6,000 years. Yes, Noah, Adam and Eve, Osiris, Ta-Aurora, Zeus, and Vishnu have much deeper meanings now, and as they join hands and walk with us, we hear Adam and Eve saying, "Listen, for now we can truly share our story with you."